This is the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast.
Exclusively on the Herd Out Media Network.
Tell it to me straight up.
Hello, and welcome in to the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast, proudly part of the Hail Varsity Network. I am Greg Smith, your Where the Hell Did the Month of August Go friend. Seriously, I blinked and I feel like the 2021 is now almost over, including this month, obviously. And that's also how my weekends feel nowadays, too. That football season is back. It kind of kicked off in full gear for me on Thursday when I went out to see Bellevue West versus Omaha Burke. And then on Friday, I was back in Omaha to see Columbus traveling to Omaha to take on Omaha Central. Two games that were, I guess, could have been a lot closer. They would have been better games if they had been closer. They were not. Bellevue West started their season off strong by blowing out Omaha Burke, even though Bell West did not play to their full capabilities, which is a scary thing for the rest of Class A. And then Omaha Central came out in a nice fashion in their first game since 2019 to be able to go ahead and take down Columbus, who has star linebacker Ernest Hausman, Nebraska commit for the 2022 class, who played a pretty good game. I thought that he'll have to work himself into a little bit better shape as the season goes on, just because he plays so many snaps for that Columbus team. He's clearly their best player far and away, obviously being a Nebraska commit. But they ask a lot of him, and he's going to have to continue to answer the bell each week. And so that'll be interesting to see kind of how they fall throughout the season as they're breaking in, I think, 12 new starters that Coach Williams told me about a couple of weeks back when I went out and saw their practice. Now, today, I am actually joined by myself. It's just me, myself, and I on this one. I'm flying solo today, I think for the first time ever on the podcast. So we're going to get right into it. Each week, we have a couple of segments that are mainstays of the show. The first one is called Coach Speak, where we go over something that a coach, player, or talking head said, and then give you the straight up breakdown of what they meant.
Coach Speak to Real Talk.
This week comes courtesy of Nebraska coach Scott Frost. Now, Frost had this to say about his team not gaining momentum or needing a spark after the team's 30-22 season opening loss to Illinois this weekend. He said, quote, "The one thing that we've never gotten around here is the spark. If we win a couple of close games, string some wins together and get some momentum, these guys really believe that they're better. They know they're better. They are better than they've ever been. We got more talent and more depth. I've been saying that, but they need some good things to happen if they're really going to believe. And sometimes I feel like we're snake bit with the timing of when those things happen, but we've got to find a way through it." This is where I normally ask a guest, what does this all mean? So I'm asking myself, what does this all mean? Now, there's actually a lot there, and I think that this was kind of the big pull quote from the post-game press conference. One of the two, the other one being so when he talked about them guessing wrong about the game plan offensively and what kind of fronts Illinois would come out in, with its whole separate different issue that probably shouldn't be happening in year 4 of a coaching staff at a Power 5 school in the Big Ten. But I digress. This spark as a program quote got a lot of attention, but I also think that, Brandon Vogel wrote a fantastic article titled, you should go read that on hailvarsity.com, titled, "A butterfly is not going to flap its wings and fix Nebraska football," which is 100% true. And I think the sentiment that I immediately went to after hearing this quote, to me, it means what he's saying, obviously, is the team needs momentum and they need to find a way to kind of get the ball rolling. The problem that I have with the tone of this quote and him continuing to say something in this realm of they just need a spark, they just need momentum, the team just needs good things to happen, is that in playing sports and in a lot of cases in life, like those sparks are not going to just magically appear. Like that's not something that any team is just going to give you especially when you're playing teams in conference, right? Keeping it just to that because they played a conference opponent this week. Like these are good coaches and good teams in this league. Even the team, whoever it is that you feel is the worst team in the Big Ten Conference, has, Power 5 players, and they have a capable and competent coaching staff. And to be frank, most of the coaching staffs in this league are actually very good. Like if you start making just a list up and down of the top to bottom, the best coaching staffs, even like those bottom three. Like if you're going to maybe like Jeff Brom and Purdue is now in that bottom three or bottom four when it comes overall. Even a team that's not very good and Rutgers, who may be on the rise, that team led by Greg Schiano has a very good staff. Obviously, Brett Bielema knows what he's doing in the Big Ten. So you're just never going to like just magically having those breaks happen for you is just not something that's really ever going to be in the cards. And the problem, another problem with continuing to say that is you begin to have, I think, a kind of woe is me, defeatist attitude about how you go about your work. It's not, we need to go create. What he's not saying is we need to go create our spark. We need to be able to do this to help ourselves. It's just, oh, the ball bounced the wrong way. Or, in some cases of the fans, if we didn't get that penalty call, if the Big Ten refs didn't have it out for us, whatever, insert whatever excuse you want to put in there. It just becomes very difficult to see how this team is going to actually turn this around if they believe truly, and their leader truly believes, that they just need a spark to come about and it'll happen. Sparks aren't actually created just by happenstance. An actual spark, we take it to the literal sense with fire, is created by you, rubbing two things together to be able to create that spark and then build that fire. That's how that happens. It doesn't just happen by accident. So I think that part of it is concerning, but it also feels like it's something that, Scott Frost really, truly believes in his heart. Like he believes in his heart that they just need that spark. And while part of that may be true, the part that continuously gets left off here is that the Nebraska football program needs to create that spark. They need to be the ones to initiate that. It's not going to just fall from the sky magically. Now, that leads us perfectly into kind of, talking about the main topic of today's pod, which I guess will be, kind of a Husker game review from this first week.
Let's break that down.
Listen, that's not a way that I guess anyone following or hoping that Nebraska is going to be better would have wanted that game to go. That it's not, Scott Frost had the other big quote in the post game, which that it felt like watching the same movie over again. And that's definitely what it felt like. And I think it really was, quite honestly, the worst case scenario for how the season started, not just with a loss. Like a loss is one thing that they really didn't want to have happen, obviously, and that brings its own set of issues. But having that loss happen where it looks largely the same as it did for the previous 3 full seasons under Scott Frost. And it's a whole nother issue because it'd be one thing if Nebraska had lost this game, 35-31, in which the offense looked crisp for a large stretch of the game. The defense looked pretty good, but then they just kind of wilted because it was hot outside and they got tired and maybe the depth just wasn't there the way they thought it would be. I'm trying to think of a different scenario in which they haven't lost games previously. You get what I mean? Is that the way that this game unfolded, and the mishaps and miscues and mistakes that piled up to cause this loss are things that we have seen time and time again under Scott Frost in his time at Nebraska. The defense having all of the momentum in that game and playing so well, especially to start that game, to then get a huge interception while up 9-2, them and maybe take a double-digit lead if they go ahead and convert that, have that interception to not only be overturned, but have it be overturned because of penalty, and then have an additional penalty on top of that with personal foul and the taunting, regardless of how you feel about the personal foul portion of it for roughing the quarterback. I thought it was soft. I don't know what Caleb Tanner was supposed to do there. It is really hard to tell guys to not, quote unquote, drive the quarterback into the ground. That's just that's how you played football for your entire life. I never saw the actual taunting in any of the replays, so I don't know what that was. I'm also just generally not someone who's ever going to be that upset about taunting. Like I get it a little bit at the collegiate level. I 100% don't get it at the NFL level. Like I think that needs to be done away with In fact, I think it needs to be encouraged at the NFL, at the professional sports level. But I didn't see it, so I don't know how egregious that one was or was not. But to have that play, to have the special teams, series of blunders, the fielding the punt inside of the one and then trying to throw the ball back across the goal line and have that end up being a safety. The 2 missed extra points by Connor Culp, which really, as Scott Frost said in the post game, is not something that we've necessarily seen out of him because he's, the reigning Big Ten kicker of the year. And he's the only all-conference player that Nebraska has had under Scott Frost. Like that was actually uncharacteristic for him, but not uncharacteristic for what we've seen from this program over the last handful of years, because the kicking woes have been real during the Scott Frost tenure. Now, on the one positive side, Nebraska has definitely found their special teams, their specialist as a kickoff specialist. Brendan Franke with several touchbacks in that first game, but even the punting game was wildly inconsistent. Like, for a team that talked so much and apparently spent so much time on trying to fix special teams, we did not really see that. So to see that play out is disappointing. That was more of that, quote, same old movie. To see the defense, to me, was the same movie, but not necessarily in a bad way. I thought the defense played really well overall, and I'll be curious to see as we go through this week kind of what's said about the defensive performance from the players and the coaching staff. I record this on Monday morning. It goes live obviously on Tuesday, so we've not had any of the press conferences yet, but I'll be curious to that. Outside of that drive to begin the third quarter, where Illinois really I thought that was the kind of nail in the coffin for the game to me. I know that scoop and score at the end of the first half was a really, really big play, and that kind of changed the momentum. But that drive by Illinois, which was this textbook, old school Brett Bielema, Big Ten football, to be able to put that drive together and finish it off with a touchdown, was for Illinois a masterful drive. For Nebraska, exactly what they could not have. And then on the offensive side, I don't know, and I'm running out of ways to describe what we're seeing from Nebraska's offense, because it's a combination of lacking confidence from the quarterback position, but also lacking confidence, it feels like, as a play caller for Frost and Lubick, lacking confidence in sticking with the run game after hearing all off season about how improved that was going to be and how much better they felt about that. Like, last week's coach speak was Greg Austin and how he was saying how excited he was to showcase this running game. And then they just felt like they just abandoned that run game very, very early in the game. I understand that they got down, but in theory, as I just explained, they really didn't get that down until midway through the third quarter, because that's when Illinois put together that big scoring drive. It was 14 plays, 75 yards, 8 minutes and 4 seconds off the clock. That's what put Nebraska down 23-9. So even then, you could still kind of run the football. I think Nebraska gave up on the run very early, especially when you compare it to the excitement level about not only the running backs, but definitely the offensive line and what they were going to bring to the table this year. And so we saw a lot of the same from that offense, which has just struggled mightily to be consistent under Scott Frost. And that has to be to me, the clear most disappointing or surprising thing thus far about Scott Frost's time in Lincoln is that was what he was brought here to do. He was brought to Lincoln to, of course, win games and to restore Nebraska to glory and all of that, get it back to something closer to what it was like when he played here as far as wins and losses. But outside of that big picture portion of it, Scott Frost was hired here to bring the UCF offense, to bring the Oregon offense, what Chip Kelly is trying to do at UCLA, and they played well this weekend, and bring it to Nebraska. And like, not only have we not seen, UCF level offense, which is admittedly difficult to do. A top, 5 offense in the entire country is difficult to produce, but we have not seen a top 5 offense in the Big Ten. And that has been extremely surprising in the way that we've gone about this. And it happened again. I guess the theme will continue to be same old story, the same movie again, is that we once again saw a Big Ten opponent come out in a game against Nebraska and say, we're going to play man coverage one-on-one on the outside. We're going to play the safeties up close to the box or even in the box in some cases. We're not going to really be threatened by a deep ball at all. With the wide receivers out there and with your quarterback, we're going to, make it very difficult for you to run the ball. And we're going to keep putting you on third and longs. And eventually you guys will make a mistake. That's been the blueprint for Big Ten defenses time and time again during this era. And it's just become something that I don't know how Nebraska is supposed to fix that going forward. Now, I do think that they're going to have to figure out a way, obviously, to be able to run the football better. Like I thought, and I think we talked to Brandon Vogel about this, the thing last week on the show, is the thing that I still believe in my heart, the thing that will have to change to unlock this offense is Nebraska's going to have to be able to run the football consistently and threaten people with the run, so that they can then play off of that, play complementary offensive football and use that play action pass. And so that you can then have more balance in this attack. It can't be, again, what it was this week, where Adrian Martinez is your leading rusher. And he was, once again, with 17 carries for 111 yards and a touchdown, with a long of 75, obviously really bolsters that. And so then you have Gabe Ervin, number 2, with 12 rushes for 33 yards, a 2.8 yard average. Ramir Johnson, 4 for 11, 2.8. Marquise Stepp, 3 for 10 with a 3.3 yard average. That's just not going to get it done. Like it really isn't. And Nebraska has got to figure out a way to be better than that in the run game. Otherwise, it's going to continue to look the same, because the concern here is that eventually you're going to start facing better defenses, right? Like Illinois' defense, which was very bad last season and which led to Lovie Smith, being let go, and obviously Brett Bielema coming in to replace him. Like, this is going to be one of the, softer defenses that you end up facing in conference. So when you end up getting, kind of to the meat of this schedule, and it'll start after the non-con is over, the next 2 weeks, you're not going to learn as much about the team. I guess I should say the next week. We shouldn't take anything for granted necessarily with this program. But the Fordham game I'm taking for granted. Buffalo, I do not think anyone should be taken for granted. And then OU, we know how that's going to go. But once you start that run of Michigan State, Northwestern, Michigan, Minnesota, that 4-game stretch of 4 teams that are going to be out there playing good defense, they're going to be geared to just play one-on-one press coverage on the outside, dare you to beat them, and dare you to be able to find ways to crease them in the run. Like, this is going to get tougher for Nebraska as the season goes along. And that, I think, is the big concern for a lot of fans with what happened in this first game, is that it takes all of the wind out of the sails of the program going into it. So then, now we get to this situation where we're in week 2 against Fordham, and a game that was supposed to just be, the first of really 2 tune-ups before you then take your big swing at a great opponent in Oklahoma, a top 5 team in the country, is now, oh, well, here we go again. Like, this Fordham game doesn't really matter, because I'm struggling to figure out what it is that Nebraska could even do in this game this weekend that would really make a bit of difference for the perception that people have right now of the program. And maybe that matters, maybe it doesn't. I tend to think it does. But at least for the players' sake, they're going to have to figure out a way to, I think, get excited for this game. I know that there was a lot of talk after the game about, it's not just a 1-game season. We've got a lot of season left. And that's true. That is both logical, a good way to think about it, and technically the correct way to think about it, because there is a lot of season left. There are 11 games left. The problem is, in my mind, is that this Fordham game being where it is because of the shuffling of the schedule actually doesn't do Nebraska any favors for getting them that spark or getting them that confidence that they need, because a lot of those same bad habits that got them beat against Illinois, and it was an 8-point game, another one-score loss, those won't cause them to lose the game against Fordham. Like, it would have to be catastrophically bad for Nebraska to lose this game against Fordham. So I just don't see that happening. But because of that, you're not really going to have a ton to gain in this one either. Nebraska's kind of in a no-win situation, but you just need to go out there and perform better and just execute. I think the best thing that Nebraska could do this weekend is to go out, obviously win the game. That's the obvious thing, and they should. But to also go out and play a clean football game. We've had such few games of that over the last now 3 years. And I think that's goal number one, is to go out there and not have any of the goofy plays like the punt return, to not have the terrible plays like the scoop and score, to not have the bad interceptions, the missed assignments, and that sort of thing, missed extra points, chip shot field goals, those sorts of things. I guess it would be the first step towards, okay, let's start to build towards something where maybe Nebraska can still make a bowl game. Because the reason that people are really talking about that early, about, well, now that bowl game seems like it's really going to be in peril, is that I read to you what the first 4 or the next 4 conference games are, starting September 25th against Michigan State. But it's going to be hard pressed to see Nebraska winning 5-6 games if you then also lose to Oklahoma and then you start the rest of that conference slate and things go poorly. Because eventually what happens is, and it's just a natural thing, guys start to check out. You start looking out for self. It becomes hard to regain any sort of momentum in your season for a team that, oh, by the way, has not been able to do that at all over the last, really goes beyond the last 3 years, when trying to figure out how to flip the script inside of a season. Like it has been historically now for the last good bit of Nebraska, stretch of Nebraska football. Once things start rolling the wrong way for this program, they continue to snowball in the opposite direction. There is no way to stop that momentum. And I guess that will be the thing that we're really watching for moving forward. But with all that being said, there is a lot of season left to be played. And so if Nebraska wants to be able to, if they can flip that script, if that's in them, that's definitely an opportunity there by virtue of them having 11 more games. It's just going to take a lot before I think fans buy into that. And it's honestly going to take a lot for this team, I think, to buy into that. And it's going to take multiple weeks and multiple games of them playing well for that to be the case, and that belief to set in. And Nebraska needs it, but they definitely need to create it. It's not something that is just going to magically fall from the sky. Now, every week I end the show with a segment, which is my favorite segment, called Put Them on Blast, where we basically put someone on blast for something they did or said.
Put them on blast.
This week is another social media thing. Last week I put fools on Twitter that were doing the Milk Crate Challenge on blast. This time I'm going with the haters on Twitter and just the larger social media universe. And I think there are some sports writers that are guilty of this as well, mostly national guys that are out there doing this. And then it was very popular over this weekend to dunk on Nebraska football for losing that game. And listen, I understand. I get how we get there, and that's totally fine. You can do that. If they lost the game, they've been bad, very bad over the last handful of years, historically bad. And so they deserve the criticism that comes with that. They deserve the criticism, but let's be factual about the actual criticism. And what I mean by this is I saw a lot of variations of Nebraska football shouldn't expect to win anyway because, it's not 1997 anymore. Nebraska football is the VHS tape of sports, and so it just shouldn't happen for them. And I find that to be utterly ridiculous because what Nebraska fans are asking for, and this gets misconstrued all the time, I think that there is still this weird perception that Nebraska fans are saying that it's championships or bust, that whoever's here just needs to win championships and they need to be TO, and that's the only thing that's acceptable. And that's not what people are saying. I think that fans are so beaten down at this point and have lowered their expectations to the point to where a lot of the conversation before the season was get to 6 wins in a bowl game and that will show progress. That is a far, far cry from saying championships are bust, which is what a lot of people would have you believe that Nebraska fans are out here saying. I talk to you guys all the time. I know that Nebraska fans are not actually saying that. Also, to say that Nebraska football is not winning because the game has passed them by or they're the VHS tape of college football is also utterly ridiculous because Nebraska isn't losing games because they think that it's 1997 or that the game has somehow passed Nebraska by. If Iowa State can win and be a Big 12 title contender in Ames, Iowa in 2021, and over in Iowa City at the University of Iowa, Kirk Ferentz can have that team as a competitive team year in and year out. If Northwestern can do it, if Wisconsin can do it, why is it that Nebraska could not be a competitive football team? I'm not talking about teams that have championship aspirations on a yearly basis. That's not what those programs are. Now, they might catch lightning on a bottle, and Iowa State has a great situation this year, and they have a real opportunity to make some real noise, and they are on kind of the expanded list of teams that can make a run at the college football playoff. But that's the exception to the rule with those programs. What people are asking for with Nebraska football is for them to be competent. Nebraska hasn't been competent. That's a totally different thing than saying that the game has passed them by or anything like that, because what Nebraska did when they hired Scott Frost was get the guy that was supposed to be the young hot coach that everybody wanted, right? So let's not take the easy road just to get these jokes off about Nebraska football. And Nebraska football doesn't really need me to defend it. I just think that there's plenty of room for criticism of the program and plenty of criticism that can be levied at Scott Frost, and it is all fair and justified. That particular part of it is definitely not. And for that, those fools have to go on blast. Now, subscribe to the podcast everywhere you can listen to them. Rate us and leave us a 5-star review. If you only leave 4, I'm inclined to think you're a hater and nobody wants that. Make sure you are checking out the other podcasts on the Hail Varsity Network, the Mind Your Own podcast, the Varsity Club, the Nebraska Preps Post-Game Show, and the Hail Varsity Radio Show. Also, check out the Hail Varsity YouTube page. You can find me on there right now with Aaron Sorensen talking about the recruiting question of the week. We'll also have other videos reacting to the week of practice and press conferences throughout the week. You can also find me on Twitter at Greg Smith HV. You can email the show. We have an email at straightupbreakdown@hailvarsity.com. I will catch you next week.
A Huda Media Production.